Education USA. Obrigada, Rafa. Para todos que estão aqui, nós estamos gravando este webinar que será disponível depois no final no nosso YouTube do Education USA Brasil. Eu sou advisor do Education USA, que é uma rede de departamentos do Estado dos Estados Unidos, que visa fornecer informações precisas, abrangentes e atualizadas, que tem mais de 40 escritórios aqui no Brasil, e aqui na cidade de São Paulo nós temos 2 escritórios, um que fica na FAAP e um que fica na Mackenzie. E hoje nós estamos aqui com a Andrea Huck. Ela é da Independence Community College. Ela é uma recrutadora de alunos internacionais e ela vai falar especificamente sobre community colleges. E eu vou agora passar esse tempo para ela, onde ela vai apresentar para vocês. E no final, a gente vai abrir para perguntas, onde vocês vão poder fazer perguntas para ela, tanto no chat, como vocês também vão poder abrir seus microfones e poder conversar com ela, tá bom? Então, Andrea, I'm going to hand over this time to you. And yeah.
Great, thank you. Can you see my screen okay? Okay. Thank you for the introduction. As you may have said, which I didn't understand, my name is Andrea Hookie, and I am the International Recruiting Specialist at Independence Community College, located in Independence, Kansas. And that is really like right in the middle of the country. It's a fairly small town, and our institution is also a fairly small, friendly college. And today I'm going to talk to you about not only our institution, but about community colleges overall. I know that sometimes it can be kind of a confusing idea because I know that community colleges don't exist in a lot of other countries. And so today I just want to try to explain the concepts a little bit more. And I know as students that go to Education USA offices and advising centers, they have probably talked to you about this, but just to give you some more information. So the title is Community Colleges Explained, and I'm going to talk about some advantages, some disadvantages, and just give you an idea of what it would be like to attend a community college in the US. So to begin, the United States higher education system exists, and it's a very broad kind of system with different types of institutions. Here on my presentation on the left, universities are probably the ones that you have heard of the most and are the most popular and the most common. They are typically larger institutions that offer a wide range of different types of degrees, both undergraduate, which is your 4-year degree, and graduate, so that's like a post degree, which could be 2 or 4 more years. Then we also have colleges, which are similar to universities, but a lot of times they're smaller. Then there are community colleges, like I mentioned, which is what I'm going to speak about today. And that is an institution that typically offers just 2-year programs, which are called associate's degrees in the United States. And that one way you can think about that is it is half of a bachelor's degree or half of an undergraduate degree. And it's kind of a pathway to lead to complete your bachelor's degree at a university after you finish, which I will get into that a little bit more later. And then lastly, one other type of college is something that's called a technical school, which typically prepares students to, it's normally 2 years as well, but it's to start right in a career. I'm sure this exists too in Brazil. It's things like maybe an electrician or someone who is like a firefighter, someone who doesn't have to study as long. So to continue, what is a community college? First, I'm going to give you just an overall idea. And I hope this all makes sense at the end. If you have questions, we will of course go over those and I can clarify anything that may be confusing. But basically, a community college is a higher education institution, like I mentioned, that offers 2-year degree programs. They also oftentimes have the same technical programs, like I mentioned before. And one good thing about community colleges is typically they have really close links and connections with their communities and their towns, whether that be with the high school or different organizations or community groups, and also employers. So that can be advantageous later on because that may help a student find a job or find an internship or maybe some kind of volunteer opportunity. Oftentimes community colleges have multiple locations, so they really range depending on the college, but sometimes they could be in big cities and have really large campuses. Other times they are in smaller towns with more rural settings, and that is the case for Independence Community College, or ICC, where I work. Like I mentioned, we are a small community in a small town of about 10,000 people. So sometimes that is a bit of a culture shock for some international students because many students come from big cities, but it is a very friendly, welcoming, safe town and community. So that's one good thing as well. And then lastly, another big advantage of attending a community college is they are almost always smaller and more affordable than 4-year universities and colleges. So I'll give some examples of that here in a little bit. So to continue, as I mentioned before, so a community college is still a legitimate accredited institution. It's no less than a university. You can still receive college credit and you can receive your 2-year degree, which, like I said, is called an associate's degree. And that can help you then obtain your bachelor's degree later on. Many of these institutions have what are called 2+2 agreements. You may have heard of that before, or 2+2 transfer agreements. Sometimes they have different names. But for example, ICC, where I work, has these types of relationships and connections with other universities to help students transfer from the community college after they've finished their first 2 years, then to a university to do another 2 years to complete their bachelor's degree. These types of relationships and transfer agreements really help prepare students for the next step, because not just for international students, but students that are from the US oftentimes do have maybe some difficulties at the beginning when they start their higher education, because it's a big step. It's something really different, something new. And so starting at a community college where, you know, it's a smaller campus where there are less students, fewer instructors, fewer professors, can be a really good first step for a lot of students to help get them prepared to then move on to university. And community colleges offer many of the same services as universities do. Here you can see just a few examples, things like student support services, extracurricular activities and programs, So those are organizations that you can do outside of class. We have athletics. Also on community college campuses, you will find now on-campus housing and dorms, so you can live on campus, and on-campus student employment, which I know is important for a lot of students to be able to work while they are studying. So here are some just brief numbers to give you a quick overview and an idea about how popular community colleges actually are in the United States. So in the academic year of 2019 to 2020, 7.7 million students were enrolled in two-year colleges, like a community college. And of course, the US has many universities and colleges, and 1,167 of those are community colleges. So you have a lot of options. And then on the right here, you can see that 35% of undergraduate students attended a community college in 2019, 2020. So it definitely is becoming a lot more popular than it was, a lot more common than it was in the past for a variety of reasons. So one of those reasons and one advantage is the accessibility of attending a community college. Sometimes it can be difficult to find the right university and to go through all of the steps and the admissions process, the application process. And in my opinion, from my experience, typically it is a little bit easier to do all of that at a community college. So they're more accessible because they have many different locations, whereas a university may only be in a big city, which maybe a student doesn't want to live in a big city. On the other hand, community colleges exist in big cities, they exist in little towns, they exist in the places in between, so you can find them all over the country. Normally, the admissions process and requirements are a little bit more easy. And you'll see that here. I'll give you an example of what our requirements are so that you can get an idea. But typically they don't require quite as much or as high of scores as a university does. Also, it helps with a flexible class schedule because many students at community colleges, they may be working, they may already have a family, so they are normally pretty flexible, and it's nice because a lot of times they offer classes in the morning or classes at night or online courses, so it really helps you pick your schedule as far as when you want to take your classes. And as I mentioned before, it's normally more affordable than attending a university. And that goes from everything from the tuition and fees costs to housing to meal plans and books. And I'll show you this here in a second too with an example that I have. So going back to the admissions part, I want to give you an example so you can see what this is like. And this will be similar for the majority of community colleges, but this is what it looks like basically to go through all the steps to apply to ICC. So as you can see, it's really not too difficult. The first step is submitting the application and the required documents, which are on our website. You then would pay the application fee. And then our team of international admissions specialists and our DSO at ICC would then send you a copy of your I-20 document, which is what is required to apply for your visa. So we would send you a draft version of that so that you can review it and make sure that all of the information is correct. Then you could go on with the other steps of completing the scholarship application, completing the housing application, And really that's about it. So it's really not too difficult. We try to make it as easy as possible. And many community colleges are the same. So our process is similar to others, whether you're interested in attending Independence Community College or a different community college in the United States. So to continue to give you an idea, this is what our admissions requirements look like. So kind of as I mentioned before, you would submit the admissions application and pay the fee. And then this is what we require for international students. And this is all on our website as well, and I can share this information after. But this is about what you'll find pretty much anywhere that you apply. So you'll need proof of English proficiency, proof of sufficient funds for at least 1 year. So that needs to be for tuition and fees and housing and your meal plan, a copy of your passport, your official high school transcript translated into English, and proof of medical insurance for the academic year. So these are our requirements. Continue on. So talked about accessibility. So now another pro or advantage of attending a community college is the affordability. So I know that education, higher education in the US is really expensive, not only for international students, but for students that are from here too. And so it is a challenge. I know that's one of the biggest roadblocks for a lot of students. So that's why community colleges oftentimes are a good alternative for many students, especially just to start out. Even if you just want to attend one for maybe 1 year and then transfer to a university and do 3 years to complete your degree, or you could do 2 years at a community college and then do 2 more years. I mean, anything helps, and for a lot of people, it's a good option. So because most of the time you're going to find lower tuition and fees. As I mentioned, more affordable on-campus housing, or if you don't want to live on campus, if you're in a smaller town, then the cost of living is cheaper. There are also scholarship opportunities, just like at universities. And then we also have on-campus employment. So there are many options to help kind of bring that cost down, especially compared to what it would cost to attend a university. So this is just to give you a quick overview, kind of a comparison chart here. So on this chart, this shows semester tuition and fees costs. And along the bottom, you can see several abbreviations. So these are all institutions that are actually in the state of Kansas. So that's where we are located. There are several big universities just in our state. So the first column is my institution, ICC. The second column, you can see the institution names here at the bottom. This is a big university called Wichita State University. The third column is kind of a mid-range university called Pittsburgh State University. And then finally, this last one is one of the biggest and most well-known universities in the state. Is called the University of Kansas. So this is just to kind of give you a visual, oh, excuse me, sorry, I skipped ahead there. This is a visual of what you can expect for the semester tuition fees cost. So the numbers on the left side are in dollars, and this is 1,000. So as you can see, these other 3 universities are pretty expensive, and so that's why, oh, I did it again, sorry, keep skipping ahead. So that's why for a lot of students, it can be a good option to start at a smaller institution before then transferring to a bigger university. But now we will go to the next slide. Okay, so kind of continuing on to talk about affordability. This gives you kind of an idea of what it would be like to attend our community college. And I can't speak for all of them in the United States. Some are more expensive, some are less expensive, but this is just to give you an idea of the cost for one semester. So you can see there, we've got our tuition cost, our fees, textbook rentals, meal plan, and on-campus housing. So this would be for a student who is living on campus. And this is the amount that is based on taking 15 credit hours of classes in one semester, which is normally a pretty average load of classes. It's about 5 or 6 classes in one semester. Moving on, so another advantage is the flexibility. I kind of mentioned this before, so it's really nice because you can have a really flexible course schedule. And so in addition to the normal semesters, which are the fall semester for us, I know the seasons are different, so that would be mid-August to mid-December, and then our spring semester, which is mid-January to mid-May. So those are the main 2 semesters, but in addition to that, we also offer classes during the summer and during the winter break, so about a month in the winter. And some students like to take extra classes during those times just to get some more classes, so they don't have to do that during their normal school year. So that's one option. And then we also oftentimes have evening and night classes, and as I mentioned, online courses, which is of course super common and popular now. As an international student, you cannot do a full course load of online classes, but you can take some in addition to your in-person classes. So another example of the flexibility is the professors' availability and their willingness to help students. Sadly, at big universities, sometimes it's hard to get in touch, in contact with your professors because they have so many students and they have so many classes and are really busy with all kinds of responsibilities that sometimes it's hard to get help when you need it. And that's not necessarily the case at smaller colleges and community colleges. For example, at ICC, we are a small campus and a small college, so our student to professor ratio is about 20:1. So an average class has about 20 students, and you can really form a relationship with your professors, and they know who you are, they know your name, and you really get that personalized attention and help both in the classroom and outside if you need additional help with your homework or your classes or whatever it may be. So another thing that helps with the flexibility are the general education classes that many students take. I'm not sure how familiar you are with how our classes work, but in the US, all students have to take a certain number of credit hours of what are called general education classes, and they are more basic classes that can be anything from algebra to history to English writing and comprehension or psychology or science. So everyone has to take a little bit of everything, and taking those classes at a community college can really help you figure out what you want to study if you're unsure. And it's a good way to explore different interests and different areas of study. So if you're unsure, it may be good to do that exploring early on in your academic journey, and at a community college where it doesn't cost as much to take different classes, instead of waiting to do that later on at a university when then it could be complicated and more expensive. So one really important thing to understand is that students who attend community colleges can take courses and receive credit that will then transfer to a university. So I know this can kind of be confusing. I know sometimes students would rather just attend one institution and not have to worry about this, but it really is a fairly smooth and easy process because the classes that you take at a community college can count towards your associate's degree, but then can also transfer to a university and count towards your bachelor's degree. And to make this easier, a lot of institutions have these partnerships, like I mentioned before, that are called transfer partnerships or 2+2 programs. And oftentimes you can have two advisors. So you could have an academic advisor at your community college and have at the same time another advisor at the university that you want to attend after. So both of these advisors will be helping you stay on track and help you make sure that you're taking the correct courses and you have the correct schedule and everything that you need to start and finish where you want to, and to make sure that you're on the right path, basically, and you're taking all the classes that you need. So you're not wasting your time, you're not wasting your money. All of these things are helping you reach your final goal of receiving your bachelor's degree, or after that, if you want to continue to do a postgraduate degree. So here so I'm kind of getting towards the end of my presentation. I want to talk about some common myths that we often hear students say, or parents even, about community colleges that they just may not be aware, or they've heard these things from other people. So here are a few myths that you may have even heard too. So one of them being that classes are too easy. Now, this is kind of funny that I hear this because later on, a lot of students say, oh, I wish my classes were easier. Typically, classes, I mean, you're starting at the beginning of your degree. So obviously, your classes get harder exponentially as you go along. So yes, the classes that you take at the beginning are normally going to be a little bit easier than the ones you take at the end of your degree program. That's just common sense. And sometimes they are on the easier side at smaller colleges or community colleges, but you're still covering the same content. It's still the same coursework because it's all required for the same class. So you're learning the same material, but it may be a little bit easier. And then, like I said, it will get harder as you go along. So another thing that we hear a lot of times, myth number 2, is that at community colleges, typically students are all older and what we call non-traditional students, which isn't always the case. We do sometimes have students that are older that have families already. They may have already graduated high school and they've started working, and then they come back to a college. So there are students that are very diverse in age. So sometimes there will be older students, but it's not all of the students. Thing I mentioned before, another myth is that course credits won't transfer. That's not the case. You just need to make sure when you're starting at your community college at the beginning that if you know what you want to do, if you know what degree you want to do, and you know what university you want to attend afterwards, that you're on the right path and that you're taking classes at your community college that you will need at your university. And your academic advisor can help you through this process. Because, I mean, there is the odd case where, yeah, let's say at your community college, you take some strange class like karate 1, And then at your university, you want to study medicine. So yeah, obviously a karate class is not going to help you with your career, with your degree in medicine. So as long as you keep in mind that you need to stay on the right path and that you need to be taking classes that you are going to need later on, then your credits should transfer and everything should go smoothly, and you're not missing out on any classes or credits that you've taken. So another one myth is that community colleges are only for students that didn't get accepted to a university. This isn't true either. For a lot of students, a community college is their first choice for the reasons that I've mentioned before, and because it's just a good option for them, a good fit for them. So you all, of course, need to think about what's best for you, and what's best for how you can reach your goals that you want to reach and for your situation. It really just depends on the student. But many students choose to go to a community college for 1 year or 2 years before they attend a university because it's the best option for them. Number 5, there are no on-campus activities. So again, this is a myth. Of course, at smaller institutions and smaller colleges, there may not be as many resources and as many activities as there are at big universities. But there are still many things to do. There are organizations that students can get involved in. There are athletics, on-campus employment. So there are things to do outside of the classroom. And lastly, the 6th myth here is that there's no on-campus housing. This used to be the case in the past, but now it's becoming more and more common that community colleges do have dorms on campus, like ICC has, and many of them now have that option for students who want to live on campus. So now I'm going to wrap it up. I will leave it here on this slide for a second if anyone wants to maybe take a screenshot of this, or if you want to write down this information. So this is our contact info. We have our website right there, and then under that is our social media. And on the right side is the email address for our admissions office. So I know here in a little bit, we're going to do some questions and answers, but if I don't get to everything, or if you have further questions, you can always email that admissions email address right there, and we will answer your questions as best as we can. And these are just some sources for my information for my slides, and I think now we will move on to questions.
Oh, hi, Andrea. I'm Simone Ferreira, EducationUSA Advisor in Rio de Janeiro. Could you talk a little bit about dorms, because I saw that you have dorms at the institution. So I would like to hear about dorms, and also if you could talk a little bit about what kind of support do you offer to international students?
Sure. So for our dorms at ICC, we have 2 types. We have the traditional style dorm, where students share a room. So you would have one roommate, and then there's a bathroom that's connected. So they have a private bathroom. And then we also have another option, which is slightly more expensive, but in my opinion, it's worth it. So it's kind of like an apartment style dorm. So it has a small living space, a small kitchen, and then there are 4 individual bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. So each student has their own bedroom, and then they just have to share a bathroom. So 2 per bathroom. So that's another style. So we have those 2 types of dorms. And then all students that live on campus in our dorms are also automatically signed up for the meal plan. So then they can eat in the cafeteria on campus. Excuse me. And then the other question was about support, correct, for international students. So we have which I kind of did this in the past, and then I moved to the position I'm doing now, but we have an international student advisor and admissions person. So that is who will help the students through the whole process of admissions and through answering their questions. And then when they actually arrive to campus with their classes. And from there, we have also activities that we organize specifically for international students. So we try to do something once a month or so, especially things that have to do with traditions in the US. You know, we do pumpkin carving around Halloween, or around Christmas, we go to a bigger city and look at this park with big Christmas lights. We like to do things throughout the year that are fun. And we normally, at the end of the spring semester in May, we normally take a trip, like a weekend trip, and go to a bigger city like Kansas City or somewhere that there's some fun things to do. So we try to kind of balance it out, you know, have obviously the support that students need as far as their classes and advising and everything as far as maintaining active status with their visa and their paperwork, their I-20, and then, you know, some fun things too that are outside of the classroom. Anyone else?
Yeah, I don't think we have more questions, right, Swelling? So
Yeah, it seems like that's it. So if nobody has any more questions, then we're going to wrap it up. Is that okay, Andrea?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time and for letting me speak to you all today.
Não, thank you. Então, se ninguém tem mais nenhuma pergunta, então nós vamos terminar este webinar hoje.
I think she's freezing a little bit, but yeah, we just want to thank you so much for joining us today. And we're going to make this webinar available
da Andrea,
on YouTube.
Se vocês tiverem alguma pergunta, por favor, e no YouTube, sim, no YouTube. E sempre que tiver alguma pergunta, é só entrar em contato com nós na mídia social, que nós estaremos disponíveis com qualquer dúvidas ou perguntas. E é só isso. Thank you once again, Andrea, for all your help.
Thank you.
É só isso.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.